All right, everyone, buckle up, because we're going deep on this one. We're talking about the Tibetan Book of the Dead,
There it is.
which has kind of a spooky title when you think about it,
Yeah, it does.
and maybe conjures up images of some scary Hollywood movie.
Right.
But we're going to unpack that and really get into what this text is really all about.
Absolutely.
So to kick things off, maybe you can tell us, what is the Tibetan Book of the Dead not?
Oh, that's a good question. Well, it's not what Hollywood would have you believe.
Right.
It's not a horror story. It's not some kind of, scary prophecy.
Exactly.
It's really more like, and this might sound strange, but it's more like a travel guide,
Okay.
but for the afterlife.
A travel guide for the afterlife.
Exactly.
And specifically, it's a travel guide for this thing called the Bardo.
The Bardo, yeah.
So can you tell us a little bit about what the Bardo is?
Sure. The Bardo it's kind of like what it sounds like. It's this in-between state. So after death, according to Tibetan Buddhism, you don't immediately go to like a heaven or a hell.
Okay.
It's not a final destination.
Right. There's no pearly gates or anything?
No, not quite. Not yet.
Okay.
It's more like this transitional phase. And during this time, you have all these different experiences, and they're meant to sort of guide you towards liberation, ultimately.
So what kind of experiences are we talking about here? What happens in the Bardo?
Well, the book describes it in incredible detail, actually. I mean, it gets into what you might see, what you might hear.
Really?
The emotions that you'll experience. And a big part of that, and this is where it gets really interesting, is the appearance of deities.
Deities?
Yeah. So you might encounter what are called peaceful deities, and you might encounter wrathful deities.
Okay, now this is where it starts to sound a little bit more like that horror movie we were talking about.
I know, right? It's like, where are we going with this? But it's actually not as scary as it sounds. These deities, they're not like external gods who are there to judge you or punish you.
Okay.
They're more like manifestations of your own mind, of your own consciousness.
So it's kind of like you're confronting aspects of yourself.
Precisely.
Like your own internal world is being projected outwards.
You got it. That's a great way to put it. And the key to navigating the Bardo, according to the book, is to recognize these deities for what they are. Not as separate beings, but as parts of yourself.
Which is probably easier said than done, especially when you're talking about these wrathful deities.
Oh, yeah, for sure. It's intense stuff. It's wild. So the book even breaks it down day by day, like what you might experience each day after you die.
No way. Seriously, it's that detailed. Okay, so what happens on day one? Give me the rundown.
Day one, you're greeted by this brilliant blue light, like super intense, and it's supposed to be an emanation of Buddha Vayurchana, who represents like ultimate wisdom.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, it's like the universe's way of, right away reminding you of your true nature.
A little reminder from the universe right off the bat.
Exactly. And the book says that if you're able to recognize this light for what it truly is, which is, pure awareness, your own Buddha nature, you could actually achieve liberation right then and there.
Get out of here. So you're telling me there's like a shortcut out of the whole afterlife thing? Sign me up.
Right. Like, what a way to skip ahead. But the book does say that for most of us, it doesn't quite work that way, It's not usually an instant enlightenment kind of deal.
Yeah, that makes sense.
For most people, the Bardo unfolds over time, kind of gradually, and you have all these encounters that challenge you but also guide you.
I see. So what kinds of encounters are we talking about here?
Well, as you move through the Bardo, you encounter all these different deities, each one embodying different aspects of wisdom and compassion.
Okay, so it's kind of like a crash course in enlightenment, but with deities instead of professors.
Exactly. But instead of lectures and textbooks, you're getting this cosmic wisdom delivered straight from beings made of like pure light and energy.
That's pretty intense. But if they're all about wisdom and compassion, why are some of them described as, wrathful? That doesn't sound very compassionate.
So the wrathful deities, they're not meant to be taken literally. They're symbolic, really. They represent the parts of ourselves that we might find difficult to face.
Oh, I see what you mean.
Like anger, jealousy, fear, all those things that we try to ignore or push down.
Yeah, our shadow selves, basically.
Exactly. And the book suggests that if we haven't dealt with these emotions in our lives, they can manifest as these, kind of scary, wrathful figures in the Bardo.
Oh, wow. So it's like those unaddressed emotions, they take on a life of their own in the afterlife.
That's a good way to put it. But the good news is, by recognizing these wrathful deities as parts of ourselves, not separate beings, we can start to move towards liberation.
Okay, that makes sense. But I gotta be honest, all this talk about deities and recognizing your true nature, It seems like a lot to process, especially for someone who, just died.
I know, right?
Like, I can barely remember what I had for breakfast this morning, let alone grasp all the intricacies of Tibetan Buddhism.
Right. It's a lot, and the book actually acknowledges that,
Mm-hmm.
Not everyone's going to be a spiritual master the moment they die.
So what happens if someone isn't exactly enlightened when they enter the Bardo? Are they just kind of out of luck?
No, not at all. The book stresses how important rituals and readings performed by loved ones can be.
Okay.
It's believed that hearing these teachings, even after death, can help someone on their Bardo journey.
So it's like having a support system, even in the afterlife. I like that.
Exactly. It shows how connected we all are, even after death.
Okay, so I have to ask about this whole closing the womb door thing.
Yes.
It sounds kind of intense. Is that like slamming a door on the afterlife or something?
It's not as dramatic as it sounds. Remember how we talked about the Bardo being like a layover? Well, closing the womb door, it's like finding a way to skip the next flight entirely.
Okay.
So basically, for most beings, the Bardo eventually leads to rebirth in one of the 6 realms.
Wait, 6 realms. There's more to the afterlife than heaven and hell. 6 realms. So you're saying there's more to the afterlife than just like the good place and the bad place?
Way more. Think of it like different dimensions of existence. You've got the human realm, but then there's realms for gods, demigods, animals, hungry ghosts, even a realm for hell beings.
Whoa, okay, so it's not as simple as I thought. So where does this whole closing the womb door thing fit in?
So closing the womb door is about breaking free from that whole cycle of death and rebirth.
So it's like opting out of the reincarnation system.
Exactly. It's about achieving liberation, which is a state of complete enlightenment.
Okay.
Where you're not bound by like physical limitations or suffering.
Wow, that's pretty intense.
Yeah.
But it makes you think, if we're all trying to achieve liberation, then what's the point of even worrying about our actions in this life? Like, shouldn't we just be focusing on closing that womb door?
That's a great question, and it's something the book actually addresses.
Yeah.
It emphasizes that even though liberation's the goal, our choices still matter.
So no matter what, there are still consequences to our actions.
Exactly. Our choices shape our experiences in the Bardo. They influence future rebirths, and they affect the world around us.
So it's like, even if we get a cosmic do-over with each rebirth, there's no escaping the impact of our actions.
Exactly, and that's the beauty of this book. Even though it's about the afterlife, it has so much to say about how we live our lives right now.
That's what I love about diving into these texts.
Yeah.
You learn so much, even if you don't necessarily subscribe to every belief,
Absolutely. I mean, take the idea of impermanence, for example.
Okay.
The book talks a lot about how everything is constantly changing, our bodies, our possessions, even our thoughts and emotions.
Yeah, nothing lasts forever.
Right, and that can be a tough pill to swallow, but it's also incredibly freeing. It helps us to let go of attachments and appreciate the present moment.
That's a good point.
And then there's the emphasis on the power of our minds. The book's basically saying that our thoughts and intentions, they have a huge impact, not just in this life, but in the afterlife, too.
That's kind of mind-blowing when you think about it.
It is, and it's a call to action, If our minds are so powerful, we should be using that power for good.
So, if I'm understanding this correctly, the Tibetan Book of the Dead, it's not really a book about death at all, is it?
It is and it isn't, I mean, it literally is a guide to the afterlife, but at its core, it's really about life. It's about understanding the nature of reality, the power of our minds, and ultimately, it's about living and dying with awareness, compassion, and maybe even a little bit of humor.
You got to have a sense of humor about these things, right?
Yeah.
Especially if you're facing down a wrathful deity. This has been incredible. Thanks for taking us on this deep dive with us.
My pleasure. Always happy to chat about this stuff.
And for everyone listening, keep those questions coming, keep exploring, and most importantly, keep an open mind. We'll catch you in the next episode, same time, same place. Until then, peace out.